Welcome back, Pathless Peddlers, to another episode of PLP Talks, where we interview interesting people in the bike industry, bike packers, bag makers, you name it. If you're new to this series, you should check out our previous episodes. We had a cool episode with bike packer Kurt Resnider and also famous gravel rider Sarah Swallow. And today we have another awesome guest for you. He is one of the most prolific endurance cycling athletes out there. He's done Tour Divide, all the domestic races, a bunch of international races. He does bike packing events. He does long gravel race events like Dirty Kanza. So we're super stoked to have today Jay Petervary. Thank you, Jay, for being on the show.
Thanks, Russ. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, so it looks like we're interviewing you in the bike gauntlet room.
This is certainly my man cave. It's where all things take place.
So we were chatting a little bit earlier. You've done like a lot of events over a long period of time. Can you just rattle off a couple more that I might have missed?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've been at this since 2006, bike packing specifically. I come from kind of an adventure racing background, so multi-sport. But in the bike trade, I mean, this year I'm going on my 10th Iditarod event, and I'll try to go long distance to Nome, so that's 1,000 miles. I've done 6 Tour Divides, done the Colorado Trail Race, done the Arizona Trail Race twice now. I've been to Italy to do a few events, so they are stacking up.
So it sounds like it must keep you like super busy. Like what percentage of the year are you out doing events? What percentage of the year are you training? Or is it like pretty much like a year-round thing?
Yeah, so nowadays it's definitely year-round. It's kind of funny. Just last month, my wife brings up to me and she's like, "Wow, you've been gone for 4 months since February," and so I do travel quite a bit. A good probably 1/3 of the year, kind of traveling, going to events. And then the other parts of the year is definitely call it the back end work. But, there's a lot of other work that goes into it to allow me to do what I do. So it's just the relationships, keeping them going, touching base with partners, seeking new opportunities, answering to opportunities. And then just, nowadays I'm doing, more camps and clinics and just kind of I have more desire to go to be in the public face more and just have those interactions with people face to face.
Right. Cool. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the back end part of this, because I feel like a lot of people see the front end part, you doing events, but, maybe a lot of people don't realize that in order for you to do this, there's a lot of like hustle and there's probably like a business element to keep, to keep being able to do this.
No, it's true. A lot of people do see that front end stuff, and the reality is, I work from the time I get up to the time I go to bed, and I eat, breathe, bicycle, and there's the funny thing is like people don't really like in the bike industry there really isn't money. Mm-hmm. You have to be creative with what you do, as you know, with what you do, and people, brands, companies, entities don't really approach you and say, "Oh, here, I have some money for you. Let's do this." So if I don't get up every day and make those connections and make those things happen, I really am not going to have a paycheck. I'm not going to be able to pay the bills and conduct life in a regular way.
Right.
And that's really stressful for me. Like I didn't go to school for this. I am still trying to figure it out, honestly. And that's kind of the fun, and that's a challenge in itself, just like the events are a challenge. Like doing this is a challenge for me.
Right.
But I also feel it's also one of my biggest successes. It's not riding the Tour Divide route 6 times or setting a record. Like that's cool, and that's something I really desire that fulfills something within me. But it's not about beating this person or getting that record. Like the success is like me sitting here right now and saying this is what I do for a living.
Right.
Which is I step away from that and I am like, wow. But I'm so involved with the everyday, I don't really get to step back often and take a look at that because my brain is constantly turning.
Right, right. Yeah, we can totally relate to that. Like Laura and I have made a living off of, the website and all the other kind of tangential things. just solely from that, for almost a decade. And a lot of it looks really good on the social media, but man, there is like so much hustle and like so much unknown, and just trying to constantly see if, is this idea going to work? Should we stick with this, or should we pivot to somewhere else? Or, because like you said, like the, bike industry is not cash rich. So you have to be really creative, to kind of sustain it long term.
Yeah, for sure. And the funny thing is when I do get a lot of these remarks and comments. Oh man, you live to such a great. You're riding your bike all the time, and I can chuckle at that for sure. But I can also kind of think really in my head like these people would not want to do what I do. Right. You have to want to really do this. It's not just about riding the bike. Mm-hmm. And so like, and not only I don't think they would want to do that. I don't think a lot of people could do that.
Mm-hmm. So do you feel like maybe some physical lessons you learned in the endurance side, in the sports side, have helped you on like the business back end side?
Huge. And I actually love kind of making those relationships. It's like, it's really, I get the chills from, it's like the fruit of the labor really, right? Like I go out on these big long rides, but I learn so much about myself and applying these things to life. Whether like even recently, I've just learned patience.
Yeah.
It sounds like a very basic thing, but like, and I used to look at all my events and try to hustle the finish. I had to be to the finish immediately. So I was just always on the go. And over this past year and two, I've developed just a new thing, patience. Mm-hmm. And what it brought to me, because it opens up my mind more. I can take in different things differently. I'm not just passing things by. And it's giving, so the patience part. And then in business, if you don't have patience,
right,
these things don't happen overnight, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't get answers immediately. I mean, how many emails, responses does it take to actually get a project done? It's not like, oh, let's do this. It's like 40 emails later,
right,
then maybe we'll do something.
Yeah.
So that stuff is great.
Yeah, we've experienced that too, where it's like, well, we want to see a project happen, but it takes like, meeting people multiple times and staying top of mind and reminding them that you're there and that you're still interested. It might not be, that first year you pitch something, but maybe 3 years down the road, when they come around and go, okay, this makes sense now. So like you can totally understand that kind of more patient, like long-term kind of view of things.
Yeah, I really enjoy that. Just taking what I learned on the bike and applying it to life. And it really goes with relationships as well, or whatever, and that's cool. So the bike means a lot to me, and it has taught me a lot.
Yeah.
It's also, I'm 45 now. I am starting to look towards my future more, and I think I'll always have a role in the industry. But where is that? I'm still trying to figure out and do things just to keep that presence.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I've noticed that you've been hosting a lot more events and clinics. That's probably part of that kind of looking forward, like what else you can do and stay in the industry, right?
Yeah, and it's also a part of giving back. Like, it's super satisfactional when you can help somebody else and see a result from that person and watch that person smile, because this is something I've been doing for a long time and I don't take it for granted. I feel I'm talented and I've been really lucky with what I've done. But when you see someone else discover it, I think that's super neat. And it's always something I've been wanting to do for years, but I think it's just about timing, right? So, I don't have time for this stuff unless I stop riding my bike.
Right.
So now I'm just starting to make more space for that. And there again, and it's also because those opportunities are starting to come to me. And instead of saying, well, I'll be out riding, I'm saying, yeah, let's do that. This is going to be an awesome thing.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the events you host for some people that may not be aware.
Yeah, so a number of years ago, I kind of launched this kind of backyard series. And so we started off with Fat Pursuit, which is our winter events. And so basically we have two distances. We have a 60K, which is on December 16th. And then we host a 200-kilometer, 200-mile event. And that's kind of like the ultra distance event on snow. And that's in January 5th and 7th. And then from that, it kind of spun off. And then we started a gravel event 3 years ago. So that's Gravel Pursuit, and that's in September. And we hold these events just outside of Yellowstone National Park in Island Park, Idaho. And this year, I put on these winter events, and I see the challenges people are presented with and the struggles and all these things. And so it helps me learn, because now I'm in a place where I could see these other people trying to figure something out. Instead of in a race, I'm at the front end. I don't get to see all this.
Right.
Now I'm seeing all this, and I see there's a need for people that need education on snow.
Yeah.
And so we launched a camp this year. We teamed up with the race directors from Iditarod, and it just seemed to make sense. We have a great relationship, and so now we're holding a camp in Island Park, and that's super great. It was well received. I'm really psyched for it. Big, diverse set of people. Someone from Australia.
Oh wow!
And yeah, and that's awesome, right? And so there's going to be some more of that. I have some other things going on. I have 2 other clinics as well going on this winter. I'll be going up to Whitefish Bike Retreat. And that's an awesome place. I don't know if you've ever been up there yet.
Oh, yeah.
Russ, but
Yeah, Cricket's awesome.
Cricket's awesome. What she's built up there is great. And that's just a great venue to hold a clinic like this. And so we just got together. I known her for years and said, hey, would you mind hosting a clinic up here? And I'm like, absolutely. And that's just it's a great spot. It feels really good. And that's meant just to, it's a clinic. We're going to go through some basic stuff, but anybody from the beginner to an advanced person that rides already is going to gain something from it. There's a lot of little nuances and little tricks to be successful in winter riding. And that's why we're doing it, just to help share those experiences. And Tracy will be going up there, Tracy, my wife.
Yeah.
So that's good interaction.
Right. So who is, I guess, who would be the good candidate to attend that? Is that someone that wants to race competitively in the winter, or is just, kind of wants to fart around like recreationally, or?
I would say it's more recreationally.
Yeah.
We'll be covering some basic things about just like layering and dressing and moisture management and proper tire pressure.
Right.
And then also there's like an education side, because fat bike use on snow, there's still a lot of advocacy going on and trying to figure that out. And I've kind of been involved with a lot of that in my area and helped see a lot of that go through with success. I do like to share a lot of that stuff, because a lot of people want to know how they can help in their community and start up some grooming, or just how do you work with the different agencies to allow this use, and so talk about that as well.
And I have like one specific question about trying to keep warm, and that's the feet. Do you have any kind of like just basic, do you use like a vapor barrier to kind of keep your feet dry and warm, or what's the basic foot strategy?
Yeah, the feet thing is a hard problem for most winter riders, and of course I'm going to first plug 45 North boots. So true cycling winter boots, but a pair of Sorels will work as well too, or whatever you have. Always use that. But plastic bags, which act as vapor barriers, can work well. And if you are buying a new pair of shoes and just looking for an inexpensive boot, just size up. So maybe you can get some layers in there. But the vapor barrier is huge because it does block wind and it does trap heat. The tricky thing is it traps moisture as well.
Is there?
So you gotta be comfortable with that a little bit.
Yeah. When you're looking at a boot, is there a certain level of insulation that you'd recommend, or does it?
Been around this and seeing all these different weights and the claims that boot manufacturers make. Gosh, you look at a boot and it says, "Oh yeah, good to -20," and honestly, none of that is true. I've yet to see any of that in the real world, and I think it's more like just kind of looking at the boot yourself and almost making your own decision, being like, "Is this going to be warm or not?" It's hard to get insulation in the front of a toe of a boot,
right?
So a lot of that insulation tends to be like kind of in the ankle and things like that. So it gets to be tricky.
Yeah.
But I would say, like, kind of when you are trying to match up your bike, like maybe look at the bulk size of the boot, because big sloppy Sorel is actually really hard. So maybe something a little bit more streamlined could be well. And then also the weight of the boot.
Mm-hmm.
The easiest thing to do is just to go and buy over boots. If you're really looking for an easy thing, there's a brand called Neos over boots, and they make all different ones, and they will go on. I know people that ride in tennis shoes.
Wow.
With Neos.
Is it like a neoprene, or what's the material?
It's a full-on overboot. It's like a Cordura, or it's not a Gore-Tex, but a treated Cordura, because they are waterproof. Actually,
right.
People use them for fishing, wading. They have ones with built-in gaiters in them. So you should check out the line, like personally for you. And they're not a big investment,
right?
But they can be used for different things.
Right.
So if you're unsure, it's not like you're just like, oh, I'm just buying these for this one use. You'll use them for something down the road.
Right. Well, let's move on and actually have some reader questions. Like I put it out on various media. I don't know if you feel like answering some reader questions.
Yeah. I don't hide anything.
So one person asked, how's the hand surgery doing?
Yeah, doing good. Thank you for asking. That's been a real crux in my life, actually. But doing well. I kind of got back on the bike about 2 weeks ago, putting a lot more pressure on it and things. I'm going to evaluate the surgery that took place. I actually had it in my elbow and my wrist. I'll evaluate in the next several months. And if I feel it was ultimately a success, which I kind of am thinking, unsure yet, then I'll get my other one done.
So was that something that came out of cycling or the endurance sports, or is it just life?
Yeah, it's a buildup of life. I come from a construction background, and so using my hands all the time, I think it was from there. And the way I ride probably really isn't that healthy.
Yeah. So someone else asked for hygiene tips when you're out there, doing a long multi-week trip. Like, how do you keep from getting sal sores and all the other kind of nastiness that comes with, hygiene issues?
Certainly something to pay attention to. You can't get sloppy down low, because then you will be dealing with that stuff. So I think there's a level of airing things out per se.
Yeah.
I personally, in a summer event, I sleep in the nude with my shorts down. I try to air things out. And then just, wet wipes go a long way, and just staying clean. But it's something that you do have to pay attention to when I go into a rest stop, gas station, whatever, just a resupply. I'm definitely going to the bathroom and washing everything and just kind of drying everything out.
Right.
Don't let that go bad.
Right.
Knock on wood, like all that stuff. I can count on one hand how many times I've had saddle sore in 20 something years.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. And someone else asked, how did your relationship with salsa start?
I can remember the exact times. In 2007, I rode the Tour Divide, and I built up a pair of wheels with their rims. And I was encouraged to go to Interbike that year in 2007. And I don't know, I didn't know anything about the industry really. Mm-hmm. I went to Interbike that year and went around and thanked every manufacturer that the parts that I used. And I can remember going to the Salsa booth at that time. Mm-hmm. I met Mike Reamer, marketing manager. I said, hey man, I'm just stopping by to say I ran your rims. I set the record on the Tour Divide and I had the best time of my life. Mm-hmm. It was super short and sweet. He's like, I know you. I know what you did. And I remember that specifically. Mm-hmm. And then for several years, I rode for just another brand. And then that was just whatever, super relaxed. And then as I started getting into more snow riding and seeing their rebranding, and I was friends with Mike through this time. He set me up with some parts when we built our first tandem. And then when they kind of rebranded, I seen it and I just admired what they did. I met a few other people in the industry and within salsa through those years. And then it was just like, this is kind of just makes sense. This is what I'm doing. This is where you guys are heading. This is what you're doing now. Hey, Mike, let's do something here. Mm-hmm. And so it was very, very, very easy. And I felt it was very natural.
Mm-hmm.
And now our relationship is great.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they're definitely a cool brand. I mean, we do a little work with Mike as well, and they're good folks.
Well, it's I like to describe them as very genuine. They're, of course, bike brands are in business to be in business and make money, of course, but they're not actually sitting around the table saying, how can we take over this category and make a bike to kind of make dollars and crush the market?
Right.
Like they're sitting around because they all do it. They love the outdoors. They're like, cool, I want to do this. Let's make something for this.
Right.
And just so genuine and passionate. And that's what I really enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like they're definitely like an authentic brand. Like,
Authentic.
when they came out with like, the idea of the Warbird, gravel race bike, people are like, you mean like a cyclocross bike? And now like every other brand is like fallen in step with like their own gravel race bike. So they really like, stick to their guns and go for it.
It's been really fun to be in the bike industry, and at least my time, because I have seen categories be introduced and laughed at, and now you can't scroll your feed without reading the word adventure, which
Right.
actually I'm almost like honestly sick of reading, like
Right.
seeing that word. Come
Yeah.
up with another word.
Yeah.
And then like the categories that were laughed at that are not true categories. And it's just awesome to be around the industry, I think, right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an exciting time. I mean, I think like the bikes are so cool that people are making. So let's talk a little bit about what do you think about like when you're on a really long ride? Like what goes through your head? How do you keep your mind occupied for days, weeks that you need to complete an event?
Yeah, I get that question a lot because I think people are challenged with being bored or something like that. They're not sure. And I remember I was very scared of that my very first time doing the Tour Divide and getting into this sport. And I actually I brought an XM portable radio with me. And I wore a solar panel on my back, and because I thought I needed something to keep my mind busy.
Yeah.
And through the years, what I've learned, there's like I'm a pretty focused person when I'm riding my bike on these events, and so there's really a big mental checklist that I need to go through, and I'm going through that constantly. So I'm always crunching numbers because I'm worried about time, I'm worried about mileage, and then like I'm checking in on my body. When was the last time I ate, how much, and drinking, and looking at my bike. And so I have this big checklist that I go through. And then when I'm done, I'm probably going through it again. And, and then you make kind of ideas or plans in your head of where you might be. And then that changes. So you're constantly rethinking that. So there's always strategy going through my mind constantly. And then when that's kind of lost or whatever, I'm definitely looking around. I try to be very aware of my surroundings and whether it's the surface I'm riding on, making sure that's the correct line, dirt, snow. I try to absorb the mountain scenery, the sky, understand weather. And so I think there's just so much to think about.
Right.
And I'm sure that's a personality thing and an individual thing as well. And then when I do start to go crazy, my mind, and maybe being challenged at a bigger level or something or trying to stay awake even, pushing the limits, then I'll start to listen to music. But music to me is kind of like a tool. I use it when I need to change an attitude or something like that.
Right.
I think there's more to think about than people think. And I mean,
Right.
we have lives too, right? We're
Right.
humans. We have personal lives. I could think about that stuff and try not to think about the world.
Right. So another kind of just general training question, like when you're doing an event or when you train, do you train to heart rate or power, and do you use those metrics in the actual event?
Yeah, so I've always been an off the couch rider for many, many years, and 3 years ago I hired a coach. For a few reasons. And one of the main ones was because when I hit my 40s, I kind of felt like my endurance is still great. But I was kind of losing my top end in the short distance races, things that are a few hours long or a 100-mile event. And I kind of wanted to bring that back.
Yeah.
And, so it's been super fun. I train by power now. I train with a coach. I have a training program every week. I train about 15 hours a week, intervals, and that alone is a big part. I mean, it might not seem like a lot, 15 hours a week, but you throw in like the before time, the after time, and just it turns into a lot. It's a part of the day, 2 to 3 hours every day. And then, but it's been fun. It's helped me learn a lot about myself, and I have gotten stronger the past few years, which is kind of crazy, but super fun as well. And I don't really use them. I don't follow them 100%. I don't follow the metrics when I am racing. I am definitely in my coach, and I have a very open relationship, and we definitely both feel the same way about like your mind and your body has to be really into it as well. And so you got to have like this feel for things. You can't always go by the numbers because that could be good or bad in a situation. And so I'll use them and use the tools while I am racing, but hide the numbers. I won't necessarily look at the numbers while I'm doing it, but we'll analyze the numbers after the fact.
Cool. Yeah, Laura and I we entered the lottery to do Dirty Kanza this year. And we're both kind of scared because we're just not, I mean, we're not, like, we see ourselves as cyclists, but not athletes. You know, like most of our riding's like very like slow and pokey and lots of fishing. But, you know, I just turned 40 this year. You know, Laura's staring down the barrel of 40, and we're like, okay, let's kind of shake things up and still see what the body can do while we can push it. So,
you know, I think that's where the greatness is in that event, actually. It's like, yeah, sure, it's great to see some top guys and some fast people, but I've been going to that event for a handful of years now, and like I love like the mid-pack and on, really. Like those are the fun people to be around, and just like to see these people take on these challenges like yourself, like that is super awesome. And that's really what that event has done, and that's what makes it so unique and neat to be around. So yeah, it's gonna be fun. I'll see you there if you get in.
Yeah, it's kind of, I mean, it's scary because it's like, okay, we have like actual winter here in Missoula, so like we're gonna have to get trainers and, you know, kind of just negotiate those waters of trying to stay fit when it's kind of crappy outside. And you know, and Laura has
it's more about time on the bike than it is mileage. I think it's just being able to sit in the saddle for a long time.
Do you have any other kind of what would be your top 2 or 3 tips for a newbie doing something like DK?
One, being able to sit in that saddle for a long time. And having those patience, because it is a long day.
Right.
And always know when you are in a bad moment, it will get better.
Right.
Because it will.
Yeah.
So just take it as it goes, you know?
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think that's an awesome, uplifting note to end this interview with Jay Petervary. So thank you so much, Jay. And if you guys like this video, be sure to subscribe. You know, leave a comment if you have any suggestions for future guests, and definitely check out our previous interviews. And thanks for watching, and thanks again, Jay.
Yeah, thank you, Russ. Appreciate it.